They've put me up the top tonight. Maybe so you can all see me. So it is good to see you here tonight. And as I said last night, we're talking about empowering the immune system. Do you know the immune system is a word that's used a lot, isn't it? Do you know what the immune system is? Some people say when they get a cold it's because their immune system was down. You've heard that? As you'll see tonight, if a person gets a cold, it's because their immune system is really good. Is that a surprise? What I want to do tonight is I want to show you what your immune system is. Because as I have been telling you, the human body was designed to heal itself. And it will heal itself. Remember that little 2-letter word? It'll heal itself if you give it the right conditions. And in this series, we've been teaching you those conditions and will continue to. So, as I told you on Tuesday night, if the human body was designed to heal itself, why are so many people sick? Some people blame the genes, some people blame a germ, and some people blame a poor immune system. Is that right? So what is our immune system? Well, I'd like to begin with the first area, which is your skin. Your skin is like a barrier. And yet the skin is an amazing thing because it does 3 things. Well, it actually does 4. One is it protects us. And if you scrape your skin or if you cut your skin, you need to be very careful, don't you? Because if you cut your skin and wash it clean and wrap it up and bind it, it'll usually heal quite nicely. But if you cut your skin and then get dirt and put it in and get some manure and put it in, what's going to happen then? Will you get infection? What is infection? Is it a germ that's jumped on you to make you sick? These are some of the things that I'd like to address tonight. So your skin is a protection. Your skin also breathes. Have you heard the story, the very sad story of a little girl who was painted gold and died? Because you can't cover your skin because it breathes. Apparently when they made the movie Goldfinger, they had to paint the front part of the model, shoot it, take that off, paint the back part of the model and shoot that, because they knew that you cannot totally cover the skin. That's why it's very important to be careful what you put on your skin or what your skin is exposed to. So your skin breathes. Your skin also absorbs. Another reason why you need to be very careful about what you put on your skin. And your skin, the third thing it does is it throws off waste. Very famous doctor named Dr. Kellogg, in about the mid or early 1800s, mid 1800s, he wrote many books on health. And he called those pores in your skin millions of little sewers, throwing off a lot of waste. So your frontline defense is actually your skin. Now let's go to where the orifices are. Let's go to the head. And you've got ears. And there's holes in your ears. That's how we hear. But in the ear, you've got an eardrum, so there's a protection. And you've also got little hairs, so that if any debris comes in, those little hairs trap it to actually push it out. And I'm sure we all have at times earwax, yeah? So the body makes this waxy substance to actually trap debris, to get it out. Let's go to our eyes now. The eye is an amazing thing. There's this bony structure around it, so that if anything hits the eye, it actually hits the bone, which protects the eye. But you've also got eyelashes. And if something goes anywhere near our eye, we naturally blink. Is that right? That's a protection against anything going in the eye. But if something does happen to get in the eye and the blink hasn't been able to stop it, around the eyeball you've got a mucousy substance which can trap it. And we probably know if we get a bug in our eye or something in our eye and we make our eye go round and round the world, that sort of gets it to go right to the corner, and you can usually take that bit of dirt or that little bug out. So these are all part of our immune system, protecting the body against any harmful pathogens or microbes or dirt, etc., etc. Now let's go to the nose. Do you know the nose is very, very interesting? In fact, all inside your nose there are little cavities, so that if we breathe in air that is not pure air, it's a little bit heavy with dust or a bit of dirt on it, it starts to ricochet all around those little grooves or caves, they're like, inside your nose, until that bit of dirt or dust falls off the air, and then the air we breathe in to our lungs. And that's why if we're breathing air, like if we've been digging in the garden and there's a bit of dust, at the end of the day we blow our nose, don't we? And there's mucus in there, and the mucus helps to trap. Fascinating process to protect our body against dirt, against harmful pathogens, all part of our immune system. Now, if some dirt or harmful substances happen to get down into our bronchioles, then there are little hairs that trap and we cough, is that right? And there's this mechanism of coughing up any waste that happens to be down there. Now let's go to our mouth. In our mouth, there's a lot of mucus too. And that mucus is designed to trap any microbes or harmful things that come in. And also, there are white blood cells also that are released if there's anything, you know, that happens in our gums. That's why if the gums get infected, you know what infected is? It's actually the body sending white blood cells there and lymphatic system to help trap that. Now if we swallow food or we take something in a swallowing action that has microbes on it, there's something down in the stomach that is probably one of your most powerful frontline defense mechanisms, and it's hydrochloric acid. You see, hydrochloric acid, as you'll see tomorrow morning when I take you on a journey from your mouth all through your gastrointestinal tract to the other end. It's about 8 meters long. It's a fascinating journey looking at what happens to the food that's on our table, to microscopic substances that then can be absorbed into the blood. You see, anything that goes into our gastrointestinal tract is not part of you or me until it gets broken down to tiny substances and then absorbed into the blood. Then it becomes part of us. So let's have a look at your hydrochloric acid. Your hydrochloric acid has a few roles. Your hydrochloric acid connects or joins with pepsinogen to produce pepsin, and pepsin breaks down protein. And we'll have a look at that in more detail tomorrow night. But the part of hydrochloric acid I want to look at now is its role as part of our immune system. You see, hydrochloric acid, if one drop was to go onto your skin, it would burn a hole in our skin. And that's very important to have it so acid to help break our food down. But if any bacteria or yeast or fungus might happen to be on the food that we eat, that hydrochloric acid basically just wipes it out. Isn't that good news? So your hydrochloric acid is very important. But there are many lifestyle habits today that are causing a compromise of the hydrochloric acid. Drinking with the meals is one. You see, digestion can only happen in a very acid environment. So in an acid environment, the pepsinogen and the hydrochloric acid can't unite, and the pepsin that's released can't work unless it's a very acid environment. So when people are drinking with their meals, they're watering down their hydrochloric acid. That compromises digestion. It also is now watering down one of your frontline defenses, which is hydrochloric acid and its ability to kill or wipe out any dangerous microbes that may have come in on your food. You know, the people that get food poisoning mostly are people with low hydrochloric acid, because hydrochloric acid is designed to deal with it. Now, in my book, Self-Heal by Design, I have a chapter called The Stomach's Secret Weapon, and it's hydrochloric acid. Sorry, I just got some signs there to lower my microphone. I think that's better, is that right? Even lower? Okay, that sounds better. A bit easy for you to listen to. So, have a look at your hydrochloric acid. What depletes hydrochloric acid? Drinking with the meals? We should stop drinking half an hour before the meal and resume drinking about an hour and a half after the meal. Another thing that can deplete hydrochloric acid is eating every couple of hours. As you'll see tomorrow, we only have one stomach, and the stomach takes about 3.5 to 4 hours to digest a meal. So we should be eating about every 5 hours, ideally. So when people are eating all day long and drinking with their meals and are totally stressed out all the time, that depletes hydrochloric acid. One would never think when you were coming to a meeting tonight on the immune system, I'd be talking about your hydrochloric acid, is that right? But it's a very important part of our immunity. So let's go further down, and we'll be looking at this tomorrow night. Lining our gastrointestinal tract are villi. And these villi, over the edge of it, absorb the food that we eat. Now, when we were in our mother's utero, our gut was sterile. That's no bacteria in our gut. But when we were born, we were literally showered with our mother's microorganisms. And also, breast milk, that colostrum, that thick creamy substance that a woman's breast makes in the first 3 days, is rich in the microbes. And those microbes, they basically form a thick turf wall lining the gastrointestinal tract. Now, those microbes play a similar role that they play in the earth, and we looked at this on Tuesday night. Those microbes are responsible for the absorption of nutrients through and into the blood. These microbes are responsible for the final breakdown of our food. These microbes, and this is where we're coming to immunity, play a protective role. They protect the blood against harmful pathogens, and they also play a role of nourishment. And the cells that line the gastrointestinal tract are made down here, then they travel up, and every 3 to 5 days away they go. So every 3 to 5 days, our cells lining our gastrointestinal tract are remade. I'll be looking at this tomorrow night. I looked at this Tuesday night, but the area that I want to look at the mostly, looking at our immune system, is the protection. So if there are any harmful pathogens in the gut that actually survived hydrochloric acid, they now, if the gut's microbes are working well, they will not get through to the blood. But as I showed you on Tuesday night, antibiotics, statin drugs, cortisones, contraceptive pill, pain-killing medication, it's all compromising the gastrointestinal tract. Do you know what that means? We now have a compromise not only in breakdown, absorption and nourishment, but we have a compromise in protection. And so harmful pathogens can get into the blood that normally would not. Can you see the amazing design of the human body? God put all of these things in place to protect our blood. First of all, the hydrochloric acid, then the microbes that line the gut. But if hydrochloric acid's low and your gut lining is low, can you see what's happening now? Harmful pathogens are getting into the blood. Well, the amazing thing about the human body was we've got an arsenal inside the tissues, inside our lymphatic system and inside our blood that can even deal with it there. Otherwise, none of us, or most of us, might not even be here. So what is that arsenal? What is that arsenal that's in the blood? First of all though, before I move there, I want to show you a couple of things. I want to show you how you can boost your hydrochloric acid. So we'll talk about hydrochloric acid. We'll talk about how to heal the lining of the gut before we go into the blood and look at the amazing system in there that God has put in there to help protect us from harmful pathogens. So how can we boost hydrochloric acid? Here's a very simple one. Juice of a lemon with a little bit of boiling water on it. Drink it down just before your meal. It's acid. And what should the stomach be? Acid. Also, a quarter of a teaspoon of cayenne pepper in a little bit of water. Throw that down just before the meal. Cayenne pepper will wake anything up, am I right? Now the good news is cayenne pepper will never burn. I have a book in our library at home, at our health centre. It's called Back to Eden by Jethro Kloss. Some of you may be familiar with that book. He devotes half a page to every herb, 10 pages to cayenne pepper. Remarkable herb. And there are a few doctors that are quoted in those 10 pages. One doctor says it's impossible to abuse cayenne pepper, and another doctor claims that you actually can never even cause a lesion. In fact, if someone has stomach ulcers, cayenne pepper will heal that. Now that's not chili pepper. Chili comes from the chili family. That's quite irritating. Black pepper, that is quite irritating to the lining of the gut. You see, the whole of the gut is lined with a thick mucus. Mucus plays an important role in protecting the body. That's part of your immune system. So that's how you can boost your hydrochloric acid, and eat breakfast like a king, lunch like a queen, and tea like a pauper, so that your stomach sleeps when you sleep at night, and drink water between meals. And when you eat in a peaceful environment, because stress can knock it back. That's how you can boost your hydrochloric acid. So how can we heal this compromise in gut lining? Probiotic. Probiotic means for life. The two permanent bacteria living in our gastrointestinal tract are Lactobacillus acidophilus and Bifidus bacterium. Yes, I am speaking English. They're our two main ones. All the trillions of others actually come from those two. So taking a probiotic probably about 3/4 of an hour before breakfast, because when you take it an hour, 3/4 of an hour before breakfast, your pyloric sphincter, which is your bottom muscle on the bottom of your stomach, it goes straight, it's open, so it can go straight through. But as soon as you start chewing food, that bottom link or bottom little valve shuts, so your probiotic is trapped in there. And then your hydrochloric acid comes, and in that acid environment, a lot of your probiotic can be wiped out. So if you take probiotic, take it 3/4 of an hour before breakfast. Anyone who's been on statin drugs, anyone who's been on painkiller medication, anyone who's been on antibiotics, the contraceptive pill, notice that I'm talking as past tense there. Past tense. Anyone who has been. Because I'm hoping, from what you've heard this week, that you're seriously considering stopping these harmful medications. So, stopping what harms it, taking the probiotic 3/4 of an hour before breakfast, and there is a herb that is particularly good at lining and healing that gut, and that is Cypriol. In Psalm 104 verse 14, the Bible says that God gave herbs for the service of man. I love that verse. Herbs come in to serve you. And there are two herbs that are a bit slippery, maybe some people call it slimy, that can coat and soothe the lining of the gut. One is Cypriol and the other is aloe vera. And both of these contain growth stimulants. Now, these cells are remade every 3 to 5 days. And so someone who's got irritable bowel, Crohn's disease, colitis, gastritis, they should be able to heal quite quickly. First of all, stop what's irritating, stop what's breaking down your flora. Start taking a probiotic, which will build it up, and take the slippery elm and the aloe vera, either one or the other. Maybe a week on one or a week on the other. And that will help to heal the lining of your gut. Remember what we're doing here, we're talking about our immune system and how you can repair the processes that God has put in place to heal. Now we're going into the blood. So let's say some harmful pathogens got into the blood because the hydrochloric acid's not strong, because the lining of our gut is compromised. So somehow or other, we've got some harmful pathogens that have gone into the blood. Well, immediately, you've got some scouts. And these scouts, you see, we have 5 white blood cells. And our white blood cells are our internal army. And one of them is lymphocyte. The lymphocytes are made in your lymphatic system. Now, last night I explained the lymphatic system a little bit, how the lymphatic system is your body's vacuum cleaner. And it's cleaning up waste from the tissues. And so that also is part of your lymphatic system. But now we're specifically talking about blood. We'll talk about the lymphatic system a little bit more because that's also part of your immune system. So lymphocytes are particularly made in your lymph nodes. And they are the scouts. So they're looking around. And whenever they see some harmful pathogens in the blood, they alert the other white blood cells that are designed to come and clean it up. So your lymphocytes make up about 6% of your white blood cell. But what makes up 60% of your white blood cell is your neutrophils. And your neutrophils, they're the ones that come along and basically surround the pathogen and kill it. And something they have inside of them that they use to kill it is hydrogen peroxide. Did you know that? And it basically wipes it out. I remember when I was a little girl and I had a sore, I loved putting hydrogen peroxide on it because it all fizzed up. Very exciting. We still use it, it's great. We're looking at your white blood cells. What makes up 30% of your white blood cells is monocytes. And what makes up 2% of your white blood cells is eosinophils. And the other 2% is made up of basophils. So these are your internal army. You've heard of white blood cells? They're your white blood cells. Remember, they're the scouts. The lymphocytes are the scouts, always looking around, and they alert. There's a communication system between them. So your neutrophils, basically, when they hear there's a problem, they're there. They start surrounding. The monocytes also play a little bit of a role in that. But your eosinophils and your basophils, they basically are activated if the person has an allergy. And the most common allergens are wheat and dairy. So when a person has an allergy to those two foods, the eosinophils come in huge amounts. Basically because if a person has an allergy, they're not breaking them down properly, they start to get into the bloodstream in forms that they shouldn't be because the person couldn't basically digest them properly, and so then the basophils and the eosinophils come and they basically deal with that. At Misty Mountain Health Retreat, I do a live blood analysis when the guests come in, and when their blood goes up on the screen, they can see their red blood cells, they can see their white blood cells. And if someone has a bad cold, there's huge amounts of white blood cells. Remember what I said? People say often when they've got a cold, oh, my immune system was down. Do you know when they got a cold, their immune system goes through the roof? Why? Because it's your internal army. They're there to deal with the situation. We had a couple do our program and they had 3 little girls, 3, 5 and 7. And they wanted their 3 little girls to do the program. And so the 3 little girls fasted for the first day. They had juice and the protein drinks every 2 hours, a little bit less than the other guests. Do you know, by the end of that day, one of the little girls was feeling quite sick. And I said to the parents, do you know, 1 day's good for 3 little ones. Why don't you let them eat tomorrow? You know, they're only little ones. But one of the little girls, she started vomiting and had a little bit of diarrhea. The parents wanted me to do a live blood analysis on them. Now, I will never do that unless I get permission off a child. I don't agree with force. And so the 7-year-old, well, she was happy to have her finger pricked and looked at her blood. The little 5-year-old, she was also happy to have her finger pricked and look at the blood. Now, it's the 7-year-old that was sick, and when I looked at the blood, say you have a screen here, so we put it up on the television. So you've got red blood cells floating around like this, and in one screen you'll usually have, the white blood cell will look like that, you'll usually have 3 white blood cells. That is average. There's about 10,000 red blood cells to 1 white blood cell. So you see lots of red blood cells. Now with this little girl, there were 10 white blood cells on the screen. Everyone. And I thought to myself, oh dear, this little girl's white blood cells are through the roof. I didn't say anything to the parents because I didn't want to alarm them. I looked at the little girl's blood 2 days later and everything was back to normal. Why were her white bloods through the roof? She had vomiting and diarrhea. You see, whenever you've got an illness, you've got more white blood cells come. They're just doing their job. You see that? And what's their job? Their job is to mop up and deal with any harmful pathogens that happen to be in the blood. Florence Nightingale said sickness is a process of repair. Now, we don't like that, do we? In fact, we don't like sickness. But you know what a cold is? It's just a house clean. That's what it is. Do you know, in Salisbury, in England, in the 40s, they set up the Common Cold Research Unit to find the cause and thus the cure of the common cold. So you know what they do? They'd get someone, they put them in a hot shower and stand them out in cold air with wet clothes on. But they didn't get a cold. So they got them and they sprayed some mucus from someone that had a cold into their throat, put them in a cold, hot shower, straight out into the cold air with the cold breeze. They didn't get a cold. In fact, after 40 years, they closed down in disgrace. They couldn't find the cause or thus the cure of the common cold, and they never will. Because you know what a house cold is? Sorry, you know what a cold is? It's a house clean. That's what it is. It's time to have a house clean. Because when you're blowing your nose and coughing, what's coming out? It's all the waste. And what do you do if you want to clean your house? You use a lot of water, is that right? So we should be drinking lots of water. We should do what our grandparents did when they had a cold. What did they do when they had a cold? Hot lemon drinks, is that right? Just have soup, go to bed, put their feet in hot water with mustard, is that right? Maybe chop up onion and honey in a jar and make onion syrup and have a few sips of that. Is that right? Do you know that's all you have to do? And when you've got a cold and you start blowing out yellow-coloured mucus from your nose and start coughing up yellow-coloured mucus, what's the yellow? Pus. What's pus? It's just dead white blood cells. That's all it is. Dead white blood cells. when I was a nurse and I started coughing up yellow things, you know what I'd think? I've got an infection. I'll have to go to the doctor and get what? An antibiotic to kill the germ that's made me sick. Do you know what that doctor should have been asking me? Is, are you drinking enough water? Are you going to bed early enough? What are you doing on a Friday and Saturday night? And what I was doing on a Friday and Saturday night was not good. And because I wasn't eating right, and because I wasn't drinking right, I was 18 at the time, I didn't know anything about health. Didn't know anything at all. You know, many are sick through ignorance. Is that right? Yeah. The only hope of better things on planet Earth, I believe, is the education of people in the right principles. If I get a cold now, and I don't get many, and I cough up yellow things, do you know what I think? Body's doing its job. I'll just take a bit more garlic, I'll eat lighter. Michael and I had a holiday in Bali about 2 years ago, and it was after I'd done lecturing in Jakarta, and where I stayed, it was damp and there was mould. In fact, I wanted to change houses. I was trying to find a place where I wasn't getting tainted by this. I met Michael after my work, and we had a week's holiday in Bali, and it was the wet season, so everywhere was damp, and there's just piles of rubbish everywhere, and it smells. I mean, the hotel we stayed in was very beautiful, but over the fence, and you go down the road, we went to look at an old temple, and it was just black. What was the black? Mold. It's just everywhere. Second day, I had a high fever. What's a fever? Do you know, it's something that God designed that our body do to kill harmful pathogens. Fevers are great. In fact, when I was a nurse, if someone got a fever, we gave them Panadol, aspirin, we gave them all sorts of things to stop the fever. Do you know, at Misty Mountain, every night we create fevers. Fevers have been used all across Europe for centuries to help stimulate healing. Do you know when you have a fever, your bone marrow makes more white blood cells, your internal army. So the first day I had a fever, what did I do? Oh, well, we were on holidays. And Michael said, let's go here. And I just was, righto. It was an uncomfortable fever. I just drank lots of water, dived in the pool a bit. Second day, I slept. Do you know when the body puts you to bed, go to bed. You've been put on nature's operating table, got that? And when I used to work in the operating theatre, what do you do before an operation? You put the people to sleep. And that's why when we're sick, we sleep a lot, yeah? Like that. I slept all day. Michael would come in and go, well, I'm going to lunch now. Righto. Third day, I began to cough, and I coughed, and I coughed, and I coughed for 2 weeks. Actually, 2.5 weeks. And every time I'd cough, I'd have to run out, and I'd spit up a yellow lump. Sometimes they even looked a bit green. You know what I'd say? Another bit of barley coming out. Another bit of barley. How's it going to come out? And I knew when I was in Bali, some of the air that I was breathing was not good. In fact, the tree outside where we were staying, it was a frangipani tree, and every time a leaf fell on the ground, it was white with mould, you know, and I'm just, You have to keep the air conditioner on, or the place just gets damp. I'm glad I live in Australia, this hot, moist environment. But can you see how I view it now? I view it as nature's cleaning process. It's a house clean. And some people say, Barbara, this is a bit of a worry. You've been coughing for 2 weeks. I said, that's right. There's a lot of barley in there to get out. And do you know, when there was nothing else to cough up, I stopped coughing. Did you see that? One lady said, I'm still coughing up. I said, yes, but you did smoke for 20 years. the damage has been done and it's got to come out. So you can see that there are things that you can do to help the process, and I'll be defining that as we go through. So let me explain why wheat and dairy are probably the two most common allergens. Well, let me begin with dairy. You know, cow's milk is very good milk for baby calves.
Amen.
Got that? People say to me, do you drink milk? I say, no, I'm weaned. I have teeth and I eat food. Isn't that true? We're the only creature past babyhood that drinks milk. And cows have 5 stomachs. And after those 5 stomachs, do you know what the milk looks like? Feta and yogurt. So for people that love dairy and want to eat dairy, I said, you've got to go to organic, raw, and probably feta and yogurt you might get away with. But the current figures are 60% of Australians can't handle cow's milk. And Dr. Colin Campbell, in his book, China Study, he shows that 60% of children that have cow's milk in the first year of life can develop type 1 diabetes. Wow. And how many diabetes are there in Australia? There's about 450 new diabetics being diagnosed every day. You look at a cow, in the first year of life, it's as big as its mother. Have you ever tried to shoo them through the gateway? I tell you, they're not very bright. In fact, at our place, if the cows get through and you go down too fast, they just jump through the fence and break the fence up. So if you want a baby who gets very fat very quickly and the brain doesn't develop really well, what do you give the baby? Cow's milk. Because that's what it does to cows. It's not the best milk. And you know, but most baby formulas are made from cow's milk. If a mother rings me and her baby has eczema or asthma, I say stop the wheat, dairy, refined sugar, and your baby will clear. Because they're both allergies. And if the mother says, yes, but my baby's breastfed, I say, well, you got to stop the wheat, dairy, refined sugar. And if she says, but that's all I eat and I love that food and I don't want to stop, I said, well, you probably have to wean your baby. What will I wean my baby on? Goat's milk. You see, a baby goat's very similar in size to a baby human. And that's probably the lowest allergen milk. So, if dairy is in your heritage, and if you can get organic, raw cow's milk, you might get away with it. But remember that fruits, veggies, nuts, grains, legumes, they have all the nutrients that we human beings need. Another problem with dairy today is what they've done to the dairy. See, if you give a baby calf just born the milk in the supermarket, that calf will die. You see, there's no vitamin C in there because the pasteurisation has killed it all off. The heating of that milk kills a lot of the properties, but they heat it to kill the microbes and the pathogens. Why are they? Because the dairies are dirty. You know, if the dairy's clean, then there's no need to pasteurize. Plus today, 80% of the antibiotics that are made are given to animals. So you'll find a concentration of those antibiotics in the dairy products. What about wheat? Well, in the 1950s, wheat was hybridized. And it was hybridized to produce high yield in the plant. And they did that. But they had to have a plant that only grows that high with a thick stem so it can hold that heavy yield of grain. One farmer said to me that he gets 6 times more grain per acre with this hybridized wheat. Dr. Norman Boulay got a Nobel Prize in 1969 for his hybridized wheat. Yes, it helped the starvation crisis, but what was never addressed is what it did to the human body, the effect of that wheat on the human body. You see, the original wheat is Enkhorn, and einkorn wheat had a very fragile protein or gluten structure. It's not sure when, they estimate a couple of thousand years ago, einkorn did a wild hybrid with a field grass and came up with the Emma strain of wheat. The Emma strain of wheat is not as fragile, the protein or the gluten structure. And that Emma wheat is the wheat that was hybridised, went through intensive crossbreeding and produced the hybridised wheat that we know today. And the hybridisation of that wheat, that intensive crossbreeding, produced a very complex protein or gluten structure. It's almost only a cast iron gut can break that down. Now, if that wheat is made into a sourdough bread, which is a cultured bread, the sourdough process breaks down the protein or the gluten in the grain, and it has a much less complex protein structure. You still can get a couple of wild hybrids from the Emma, and that is spelt and kamut. Spelt and kamut, you can quite easily buy breads with the spelt. They have retained that fairly fragile structure. And if spelt and kamut are made into a sourdough bread, the culturing process brings that structure back to the original fragile structure. You see, fragile is important because fragile means that in the grinding process, in the cooking process, in the chewing process, in the enzyme breakdown, it's very easy broken down and easily absorbed by the body. So if someone has a compromised gut from vaccines, drugs, antibiotics, and they're eating this hybridised wheat, which every pasta, every bread, every donut, every cake, every cereal, every biscuit is made out of it. It's not going to get broken down properly, and so molecules are going to get into the blood. And the body immediately, the scouts say, well, we've got a few molecules coming in. So the eosinophils and the basophils are sent to deal with that. Now what we should have is only 2% of these. So when I do a live blood analysis, if someone doesn't have an allergy to wheat, and it's usually because they're hardly eating the wheat, they'll only have 2 eosinophils in the whole drop of blood. If they have an intolerance, now we'll start with sensitivity. If they have a sensitivity to wheat, I'll find 5 eosinophils in their blood. If they are intolerant to wheat, I'll find 6, 7, 8, 9 eosinophils in their blood. If they are celiac, I will find 21 eosinophils in their blood. Now, if someone has an intolerance to wheat and they go and have a celiac test, often they're told, no, you're not celiac, because the test only shows celiac. It will not show gluten intolerance. It will not show sensitivity. The most common symptoms of an intolerance or a sensitivity to wheat is grain brain, which is brain fog, and bloating. So many people I meet have both of those, bloating and brain fog. Some people don't realise they have brain fog until they stop the wheat, and then they say, I can't believe how clear my brain is. Can't believe it. And most Aussies just overdo the wheat. How many people have cereal and toast for breakfast, sandwiches for lunch, pasta for tea, maybe cake or cookie or donut mid-morning, mid-afternoon? That's overload. So number 1, the wheat's been hybridised. Number 2, overload. And number 3, children are being fed food too young. Do you know babies shouldn't eat food till they can sit, feed themselves and have a set of teeth? Is that common sense? Do you know what mothers are being told today? You've got to feed your baby food at 4 to 6 months of age because the breast milk doesn't have enough iron in it. Have you heard that one? Did God make a mistake? Let's look at Einstein. Let's look at Galileo. Let's look at Bach. Let's look at Rembrandt. Let's look at all the masters. Do you know they weren't fed food till they were 2 or 3 or 4? And it created what sort of brains? Brilliant brains. Important knowledge for people with babies. Do you know what babies should be having? Milk. Because the first teeth they get are 4 at the top, 4 at the bottom. That's called milk teeth. That's because that's all babies should have. Maybe a little taste, maybe a little bit of apple to suck on, maybe a celery stick to suck on. And when they can sit, when the molars come through which grind, then an enzyme, and I'll be looking at this tomorrow morning, then an enzyme called ptyalin is released. And ptyalin breaks down starch. We've got so many people with malabsorption in their gut because they were fed food too young as babies. My oldest son, James, was 16 months before he ate food. And he didn't suffer. He is strong, he's good at work, he's a master builder. Do you know that was normal 100 years ago? But you talk to most mothers, they're told that the baby will suffer. But you know what? We should never make decisions on this. Fear. We should be making decisions on this. Fact. Actually, facts. There are many. Now, your eosinophils are your histamine carriers. So when someone has a gluten sensitivity, gluten intolerance, celiac, they'll have too many eosinophils. And those eosinophils that carry histamine, now you've got too much histamine, now you've got allergy type responses. And what will the doctor give you if you've got an allergy? Antihistamines. Histamine is also a hormone that balances hydration in the body. So a person can have too much histamine also because they're dehydrated. Your white blood cells is usually called your immune system because your white blood cells is what basically wipes out microbes in the blood. So the $1 million question is, how can we keep a good balance of our white blood cells, of our immune system? I'm going to give you a list now of things that wipe out your white blood cells. Number 1, sugar. There's a book called Proof Positive by Dr. Neil Nedley, and he's got a list in there. He says 1 teaspoon of sugar, so many white blood cells killed out. 2 teaspoons of sugar, more white blood cells killed out. So sugar kills them. Antibiotics wipe them out. Because antibiotics, they're just killers. Now antibiotics have saved lives and they will continue to save lives. The problem today is the overuse of the antibiotic. People get a sore finger, they get an antibiotic. They get a sore elbow, it's crazy. Antibiotics should be kept for life-saving. Another thing that can really wipes out the white blood cells is chemotherapy. And chemotherapy is given to people with cancer. Do you know the success rates of chemotherapy are quite shocking? 2%. After 5 years, 2%. Now, if someone lives 5 years and 2 days, they're considered on the books that they're healed because they made 5 years. What's the old saying? Treatment was successful, but the patient died. You know, there's a human being in here. And God made the body with an inbuilt ability to heal itself, as you can see. All we need to do is give it the right conditions, and it will heal itself. So these are the three main things that wipe it out. There are a few subheadings here that aren't as powerful at wiping out your white blood cells as those. And then another one is tobacco, cigarettes. That's not right, is it? 1B. Also, many drugs. Many drugs do it. And caffeine. Most people are unaware that that can wipe it out. Alcohol. Now this list is quite socially acceptable, isn't it? And yet it has quite an alarming effect on the white blood cells. And we need those white blood cells. So the million-dollar question is now, I think, how can we boost our immune system? Well, let's make a list of the immune system boosters. Number one is water. Now, you might be surprised at the different ways now I'm going to explain how water can boost your immune system. I'll begin by telling you the story of a little boy who I saw in New Zealand. He was 7 and he had a sore finger. His mother was coming to see me. And as his mother and the little boy came in, I said to the mother, what's happened to that finger? It was twice the size, it was all red, and it had like a white pussy area on top. It was all sealed. I said, what happened to the finger? She said, it's cellulitis. Now that's not rocket science. What's cellulitis? Inflammation of the cell. I said, what are you doing? Oh, he's on his 2nd course of antibiotics. Got that? 2nd course of antibiotics. He's 7. And I'm looking at that thinking, well, that's about 10 days now. He's on his 2nd course of antibiotics. And what do you start to think? What did it look like before the antibiotics? Could it look any worse? I said, oh, anything else? She said, he's having painkillers to sleep at night and sleeping tablets. He's 7. I said, oh, sometimes that's all you can say. Oh. I said, can I try a few things? She said, please. So I got 2 mugs, 2 drinking mugs. And in one, I put hot water. And in the other, I put cold water with ice cubes. So let me show you what I'm doing here, hot. Now, if you're cold and you have a hot shower, it stimulates, doesn't it? Initially, hot stimulates. What are we stimulating when we put ourselves in water, hot water? Blood. And your blood is the healer because your blood contains everything you need to heal. Your white blood cells. You see, blood, what it does, it contains white blood cells. They're your internal army. Blood also contains red blood cells, and your red blood cells carry oxygen, the most vital element needed for life, water, the 2nd most vital element needed for life, nutrients. And you know what else your red blood cells do? They carry away waste. In fact, all we need is blood. You know, there's a song, all we need is love. We could change it and say, all we need is blood. It's the healer. So when I put that finger into hot water, what am I stimulating? Blood. Now when you got an injury, the blood tends to sit and pool in that area. And when you put it in hot water, you're forcing fresh blood into the area, which forces the old blood away. But soon, that'll get so nice and relaxed, the blood will slow down. You see, hot, after a little while, it starts to slow. Is that right? How long does it take to get from this to this? 3 minutes. And then I put the finger in the cold water with the ice cubes. And when you put, have you tried your cold shower after your hot? What do you automatically do? I did it tonight. Is that right? It's stimulating, is that right? Stimulating. It stimulates. Now, if you were to dive into a cold pool, you'd want to dive out credit straight away, wouldn't you? But if you stay in that cold pool, what happens? Everything slows down almost to death. People die from hypothermia. That's why so many died when the Titanic went down, because the water was freezing. You know what they did? They just all fell asleep. They died from hypothermia. So cold also slows. The difference is the time. So it takes 3 minutes to get from stimulation to slowing down with the hot, and it takes only 30 seconds to get from stimulation to slow with cold. So what I did was I put his finger in the hot water for 3 minutes. And then I put his finger in the cold water for how long, students? 30 seconds. Now I put it back in the hot for 3 minutes. I have a little kettle of boiling water which I top up the hot while it's in the cold, because you want to keep that hot. And I always work with children. I got him to put a good finger in. Yeah, you're happy with that? Okay, now the sore finger went in. And I did this 3 times. After the second dip, he started to smile. What is he beginning to experience?
Relief.
Relief. How long did that take me? 15 minutes at the very most? A very well spent 15 minutes. When it had finished, he's just smiling. And he's looking at his mother. What had he experienced? Relief. What did I do? Massive amounts of blood. More white blood cells doing their job. What was the white on top? Dead white blood cells doing their job. At the end of that, I said to the mother, can I put a poultice on? She said, please. So I grated potato, just a little bit, wrapped it in a little package of cloth, put it on it, put a bit of plastic around it, and then taped it on. And then asked God to bless that poultice. I was with the mother for about another half hour, and that little boy just sat there smiling at me. Why did he do that? Relief. He got more relief in that 15 minutes than he'd had for 10 days on the antibiotics, on the drugs. What were those drugs doing to that little boy's gut? What were those drugs doing to that little boy's liver and kidneys, which are the filters? The mother told me that when they got home, the little boy said, can we do that again? So they did it at 10 in the morning, that's when I did it, and then they did it again 2 in the afternoon and just before bed. And when he woke up the next morning after the fresh grated potato went all night, he opened it up, the finger was back to normal and all the waste came out with the poultice. The mother said, what will I do now? I said, I'll leave it up to you. Now when that starts to heal, you just go a little bit less on the hot and colds. No need for painkillers, no need for sleeping tablets, no need for antibiotics. So simple. Can you see what those hot and colds do? They are just boosting your body's own healing processes that God put in there. The body's been designed to heal itself. It just needs the right conditions. Did you know that 50 years ago, if you did nurses training, you were taught hydrotherapy? Hydrotherapy is water therapy. It's a very powerful thing. You can do it to fingers, you can do it to ingrown toenails, you can do it to sprained ankles, you can do it to elbows. I'm a runner, running up hills every morning. And about 3 years ago, my foot started to hurt. I didn't know what it was. Nothing I did would help, so I went to the doctor. I said, I'd like a scan on my foot. Anyway, he did a few things and he laughed. He said, you've got plantar fasciitis. I said, I've got what? Plantar fasciitis. Your plantar fascia is a ligament that goes on the bottom of your foot, and it was inflamed. He said, you possibly pulled it when you were running or something. He said, that will take 10 months to heal. I said, oh, will it? So I went home and I got buckets. I bought buckets and I did this every morning and every afternoon. And I'd be lecturing for 2 hours in the mornings, usually at 8:30 to 10:30. And by the time I'd finished lecturing, my foot would ache. I'd go home and do hot and colds, no pain. In fact, hydrotherapy has been used for centuries, and in the area of pain relief, it's almost without equal. In fact, I'm sure you can't wait to try it. Next time you get a splinter in your finger, don't do anything. Let it get all red and pussy and all that, and then try. What is that pus? It's just a dead white blood cells doing their job. You see that? Now, if you don't do anything about that, you might get a red line, is that right? Going right up your arm. You've got to do something about it. And this is what you do. Now, what happened was, I was still lecturing and travelling. You know, in the back of the car we had the buckets. If we stayed in a hotel, there's always a kettle, because people want coffee and tea. There's always ice in the freezer, so no matter where I was, no matter what I did. If I was stretched, I did it once a day. But for that 6 months, not one day went past when I did not do it. And after 6 months, it was totally healed. I've had people come to our health retreat with plantar fasciitis, and it's 3 years. One man rang me up. He said, I've got plantar fasciitis. I can tell you exactly what to do. I said, do hot and colds, ideally twice a day, maybe at a stretch, at least once a day. And it'll heal in 6 months. He said, what? 6 months? Yep. Well, I've met people, years they've been having it. Anyway, I think he did it a couple of times, and he thought, blow this. So I went to the doctor put a cortisone injection in, gave him some strong medication, brought a bit of relief for about 5 minutes. Got diarrhea from the medication, couldn't afford it anymore. So a few months later he wrote back to me, he said, I tried all the doctor's things. What should I do? Just look at my last email. It's just time. Is this right? Time. Time is an amazing thing. I love time. Do you know I use it? I use time to get more out of my day. I have an appointment every morning. I have an appointment at 6 o'clock with exercise. I wake up at 5 every morning. I pray, I do my Bible study. I've got a lot of people to pray for. I do my exercise, then I dive in the creek at 6:30, and then I eat at 7. You know, I fit it all in the day. And where I learned to use time was living in a rainforest with no electricity and having 6 children. Just imagine, sometimes I had a baby and a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old and 3 in school. And I used time. And do you know what I found the children loved? They loved it when the same thing happened at the same time every day. And we never did afternoon school. Oh, how the children loved that. But it was all about time. So use time. Because whether you're a pauper or whether you're a prince, you've got the same amount of time. Is that right? Most people lose half their day because they go to bed so late. Is that right? So going to bed early is important. So water. I could talk for another hour just on water. One of the best white blood stimulators is this quick cold. So my suggestion is, as a prevention from colds and flus, that's why this is a fantastic time to hear this lecture, is every morning you finish your hot shower with a quick cold. So the good news is you can have a hot shower for what, 8 minutes? Is that being generous? And then the cold, no it's not, 8 minutes. Start with 10 seconds and try and build up to 20. I think one of the reasons why people get colds all around me and I don't get them is because I run up and down hills every morning and then I dive in the creek. In the winter I dive in the creek for about 7 seconds. I'm very warm, I've got gloves, hat, got my little down jacket on, I'm very warm. Throw everything off, dive in the creek, quickly out of the creek, dry off, back on my clothes. I do not get cold. If I stayed in the creek for a few minutes, I'd get cold. So that's all this does. It doesn't make you cold. It's just a reaction. The neighbours might hear you screaming, but don't worry about it. So water, just this simple procedure, boosts your white blood cells and is the best protection against winter colds and flus. Also, 8 glasses of water a day, at least. And I think the winter time is the hardest time to drink. It's easy to drink when you're hot, but you've got to do it. Now that's over 24 hours. So take it to bed, have it on your bedside table. Now the most powerful way to get the water into the cell is to drink it little by little. So you wake up, half a glass of water. Get out of bed, get dressed, another half a glass of water. Go to the bathroom, another half a glass of water. Pray, another half a glass of water. Reading your Bible, can you see that? Little by little by little. I wake up at 5 and I eat at 7, so in that hour and a half, from 5 to 6:30, often I can drink a litre, but that's little by little by little. One lady said to me, I can't drink water in the morning, it makes me feel sick. I said, how much water do you drink? Oh, I drink 4 glasses every morning. I said, do you spread it out? No, she just drinks 1 litre like that. Go. I said, oh, right, now we know why you feel sick. Spread it out little by little by little by little. And there's something else that you can do that will help, and that is to take a crystal of the Celtic salt, put it on your tongue, give it a little bit of a chew at the beginning of every glass. So that's 8 times. So that'd be 8 crystals. 8 crystals a day. If you've got high blood pressure and you're used to no salt, then start very small. You see, the Celtic salt has 82 minerals. Whereas the salt that you buy on the supermarket shelf has 2 minerals. And if you buy iodized salt, now you have 3 minerals for about 1 hour. Because within 1 hour of opening the iodine, all the iodine evaporates. No, there's no iodine in Celtic salt because it evaporates. But if you eat food that is grown in coastal areas, you see the iodine evaporates with the rolling of the waves and goes across through the air and settles in the soil. So you get it in the foods that you're eating. When my little granddaughter, I've been staying with my son Peter and his wife Irana, and they've got a new little baby and a little 2.5-year-old, and she comes in every morning, Nana, and she comes next to my bed and I get my little Celtic salt, and oh, she loves that little bit of salt. And when you give a child a bit of salt, what's the next thing they do? Drink water. Yeah. So you see, water can be used in many ways. And water, we should use to wash ourselves. If you consider that your skin is really your frontline defense system, it needs to be washed every day because it's constantly giving off waste. And I think most people do that. But please be cautious on soap that you use. Make sure you've got a biodegradable one that hasn't got caustic things in it. So that is number one in your immune system booster. Number two, there are 5 hours every night where your batteries are recharged and your immune system gets a charge, and that's between the hours of 9 p.m. and 2 a.m. And because of technology today, many Australians aren't sleeping in those hours. Many Aussies are going to bed about midnight, is that right? And there's really no need, because if there's a show on, you can easily watch it on iView the next day, or you can easily record it. So make sure that you're sleeping in those hours. Number 3, eliminate all the things that are killing off immune systems. Do you know one of the reasons that so many children are damaged from vaccines today is because it's an onslaught on an immature immune system. That immune system is only just building, and then the vaccine gives it a mighty blow. It's just a miracle that any children survive it. See, when you consider that women are being told today, if they have strep B that they pick up in their urine, they have to take an antibiotic. Or if the baby's born and gets the strep P, the baby might go blind or die. So why are they women taking the antibiotic? Because of fear. Let me give you some facts. No baby has ever died from strep B catching that at birth. And our whole body has microbes in it. We need the facts, and the facts is there is no need for women to take antibiotics for that. So she takes an antibiotic which actually compromises her gut flora. And then the baby's born and gets the compromised gut flora. And then the baby's vaccinated at birth. Do you know that they're giving hepatitis B vaccines to baby within hours of being born? And do you know who gets hepatitis B? Prostitutes and drug addicts. So why are they vaccinating babies within hours of being born? So now the baby gets a further onslaught to the gut flora. And then the baby is given altered cow's milk, further onslaught. And then at 4 months of age, the mother's told, you've got to give that baby food because the breast milk, maybe it's not on breast milk, it's maybe on the formula, not enough iron, it must have food. So the mother once again makes decisions on fear. And then at 4 months there's the second vaccine. Do you know, many mothers have said to me the lights went out in their baby's eyes after the 4-month vaccine. My daughter Julia has a little baby, and her girlfriend vaccinated her babies because people are told that they're bad parents if they don't. Every parent vaccinates because they want the best for their child. Isn't that right? She said that after the 6-month vaccine, her baby stopped smiling. Oh, how does that break the heart? If every parent said to the doctor, I will vaccinate my child if you sign this piece of paper that my baby will not be harmed by the vaccine, no parent would vaccinate. Do you know Robert Kennedy Jr. in America? He has stated that he will give $100,000 to anyone who can give him one study that shows that vaccines don't harm children. Now, he's had that on the table for 2 years now. Now, I'm sure most people would like $100,000 in their pocket. That's because there's no study. Scary, isn't it? My husband's not here tonight because he's chairing a meeting in Sydney of a whole group of professors, doctors and scientists who are trying to get the information out to Aussies that vaccines are dangerous for children. And I'm speaking about that now because that's one of the big immune system slaughterers, just slaughters the immune system. So eliminate drugs. You know, it's interesting when you look at Bible prophecy in Revelation 18:23, it says, and her merchants were the great men of the earth, who deceived all nations with her pharmakias, her pharmacies. Notice that, all nations. Her Her merchants were the great men of the earth. What's the wealthiest company in the whole world that has profits in the billions every year? Do you know that? That's the pharmaceutical companies. We're going to look at this. Drugs don't cure disease, they just change the form and location of disease. In fact, they also are slaughtering our immune system, the very system that we need to fight illness. So eliminate drugs, eliminate sugar. You can make lovely apple strudels and apple pies, as I do for my husband, with spelt flour and olive oil and maple syrup, stewed apples. Caffeine. Tomorrow I'll be showing you how caffeine affects our brain function. Alcohol. There's no safe dose of alcohol. You know, in 1920 to 1933, alcohol was banned in America. Did you know that? You know what the figures are? It's called the prohibition. Mental institution occupancy dropped to 8%. Jails were nearly empty. Domestic violence almost wiped out. All because alcohol was stopped. It's a neurotoxin, no safe dose of it. Also, as well as drugs, sugar, caffeine, alcohol, and it might surprise you, it won't surprise you because I've already told you, is the hybridized wheat. So you can get spelt sourdough bread, and get some lovely spelt sourdough breads. I had some for breakfast this morning. And also dairy. If you're an organic dairy farmer and Lulabelle in the paddock is getting the best grass and he's milked and you're eating raw milk, you can probably get away with it. But I'm afraid there's not many that can do that. And again, there is no need. You can make beautiful cheeses and creams and sauces. We do at our health retreat out of nuts and seeds. I made a very nice pesto for lunch today with pine nuts. You know, the nuts and seeds can make beautiful creams. So they're the things that must be eliminated. All drugs, and in the drug category I put chemicals because drugs are chemicals. The other thing that's a poison is mold. Mold is a toxic poison that must not have any exposure in our houses. Number 4, one of the best immune system boosters, probably second to water, is exercise. Last night I talked to you about a most powerful form of exercise there is, which is rebounding. Rebounding stimulates the lymphatic system. Your lymphatic system is where your lymphocytes are made, in those lymph nodes. Rebounding stimulates those little canals that go all through the body that are pumping the waste out of the body. The waste gets pumped out through the lymphatic system, dumps it into the lymph nodes where the lymphocytes are, and then the waste of that gets dumped into the blood, which is sweated out, urinated out, and evacuated out by your colon. It's an amazing system. We've got a self-healing, self-cleansing organism. It just needs the right condition. Many people aren't healing because they're still putting into the body the things that are slowing them down. How often should we rebound? Every single day. Every single day. And when you realise that you can do rebounding in 15 minutes a day, as I told you last night, that can be 3 5-minute sections, or it can be a 15-minute section. You might like to do it all at once if you want to implement that interval training. Now, the reason why exercise is so powerful, especially rebounding, because it stimulates the heart, it stimulates your lymphatic system, and when that is stimulated, blood is stimulated, and it is in the blood where your white blood cells are made, and your blood is made. The only exception is your lymphocytes, which are made in your lymph nodes. Are there any herbs that stimulate? There are a few. One is astragalus. That's quite a well-known immune system booster, and the other herb is echinacea. And there are quite a few studies that have been done on astragalus and echinacea, on their ability to boost our immune system. You've probably heard that. The other thing that a lot of people do when they get colds, we're going up now to number 6, is vitamin C. Vitamin C is not ascorbic acid. Ascorbic acid is like the envelope. Have you ever got an envelope in the mail and there's nothing in it? It's useless. That's ascorbic acid. So when we buy vitamin C, we need to buy ascorbic acid with bioflavonoids. That's the whole C. But that's a great immune system booster. I don't take vitamin C every day. Well, I guess I do when I'm eating organic, fresh fruits and vegetables. You're getting great amounts. But when you get sick or get a cold, and there are some doctors, not a lot, but some that are doing IV vitamin C when people have cancer or serious illnesses. But that's been, Linnaeus Pauling, he got his Nobel Prize for the work that he did on vitamin C. Also, Dr. Archie Karakaralis. Now, he is an Australian doctor, and I have his book. It's called Every Second Child. I tell you, it's a fascinating book and it's a scary book. You can't buy the book anymore. So I got it. It cost me, I think it cost me about $100, this book. It's only a tiny little paperback, but it's an amazing book. I wanted it for my library. And he was a doctor, trained in Australia, went to London for many years, came out and he got a posting at Coolangatta. And when he went to Coolangatta, he was told that there were a lot of Aboriginals there, and he was told not to take too much notice of them because they were dumb and they were dirty. Now he noticed that every time a child came to him, and mostly they were Aboriginal children, occasionally white, they'd have green coming out of their nose, they'd have earaches and a terrible chest. And every second child was dying. So the children would come to him, babies mostly. He would give them antibiotics, and that seemed to wipe them out even quicker. You see, the Aboriginals are lacking an enzyme in their liver that helps them to make the vitamin C. They were particularly susceptible. So what was happening was the mothers were weaning early, and the babies were put on sunshine milk, which was a powdered milk that had no vitamin C in it. And the mothers that were feeding were living on white bread, margarine and jam. There's no vitamin C in the diet, no vitamin C in the milk. And they found what really pulled the children down was when they were vaccinated, because when they were vaccinated, that put an even bigger load on their liver and slaughtered their gut flora. So when they were given antibiotics, that slaughtered their gut flora even more, and that was killing them. So he was so upset that the fact that he was losing every second child. One child came in one day, and the child, same thing, green coming out of the nose, thick, chesty cold, earache. He whizzed the child quickly, about a 10-month-old baby, down to Melbourne to a specialist, and the specialist says, this child's got scurvy. Gave it a shot of vitamin C, and in 20 minutes the child had recovered. It's that simple. He, because of his training, still had blinkers on and still didn't believe it. He just thought this specialist was a little bit extreme. And he was very challenged too when he started to meet some Aboriginals who were very savvy, very clean, looking after, well, most of them were looking after their babies. Do you know the front page or the first few pages of his book tells about this woman who had 6 children. Her 6th child she brought to him. This child was very sick and had big bruises all over it. There was another doctor there who claimed the child was being abused. And so the woman was put into jail. She was in jail for something like 15 years before finally they proved that the baby died because the baby had scurvy. Just shocking things that have happened. Eventually, he realised it was just vitamin C. It almost seems too simple. So he started to give the babies vitamin C. For 2 years, he didn't lose one baby. The book's called Every Second Child. Just incredible. So what would people say about these babies' immune system? They had none. Why didn't they have any? Because they were lacking vitamins and minerals in their diet. Because their own immune system was being slaughtered by the drugs, the vaccines, the chemicals. It's a very sad story. In fact, there is the story of this was happening in the 50s when the Aboriginal women out at Alice Springs saw the nurses and the doctors coming to vaccinate. They would grab their babies and they would run off in the bush because they knew that a lot of them would lose their babies. So these stories are not known. Because my husband has started his own political party, which is the Involuntary Medication Objectors Party, objecting against the forced medication of Australians, and that's one of the meetings they're having tonight. He is meeting a lot of people and a lot of stories are coming out that we had no idea existed. And that's why part of boosting the immune system, you must stop what's actually slaughtering the immune system and begin giving the body the conditions that it requires. So when this little boy with the finger that was like this, that we did hot and coals and grated potato, which actually opened it and just drew all the waste out, why was the finger like that? So I investigated, because I said to the mother, something must have happened to that finger. Can you see? We all should be private investigators investigating why these things are so, because things don't just happen. That defies science. Newton's third law of motion states that to every action there is an equal and an opposite reaction. So I said, what happened to that finger? She said, oh, he had a blister. And the blister broke, and he was outside playing with his matchbox cars in the dirt. It's not rocket science, is it? That's why one of the first things I said to you is that our skin is a barrier. It's our front line for our immune system. So now the dirt got in. An amazing thing happened in there. Do you know what the body immediately sent? White blood cells. It actually started to seal off areas so that the infection wouldn't go anywhere else. It sent lymphatic system. In fact, that's why the finger was so big. An amazing process is happening in there. Now we just need to help the process. Can you see that? The hot and colds, what are the hot and colds doing? They're just bringing in a mighty way massive amounts of your blood. And it is your blood that's your healer, and your lymph, which is helping to take the waste away as the body's vacuum cleaner. My sister is a senior science teacher. When she teaches her class immunology, she finishes by saying, see, the body's been designed to heal itself. Do you think those kids usually hear that? Every good doctor knows that he can set a bone, but he cannot heal a bone. He can stitch the skin together, but he cannot heal that skin. It is the body and the body alone that heals itself. And if I was in a car accident and broke a bone, I'd be very happy to go to hospital and have those bones set and have what needs to be done so that I would heal. Let me finish by telling you a story of a young man named Joel. This young man is a homeschool boy. He worked for us a few times, very good worker, eldest of 6 children. His father's a Maori, so he's a big, strong guy. This happened when he was 18. The family is building a house. They bought land. So they went to an old house that was being dismantled, and they're gathering all the windows. And they'd been doing it all day, and Joel said to his father, just one more window, isn't that usually the problem? Been working all day, tired. And he was trying to push this window out to get it, and his body weight went too far on, and both of his hands went through the glass. Cut tendons, cut ligaments. His father quickly bound him up, rushed him to the hospital. They cleaned it up. They rang me. I said, if you've cut tendons and ligaments, you've got to have surgery and sew them back together. Because when they break, sometimes it can be a 2 centimetre. And he's a pianist, beautiful pianist. I said, no. I said, I would have the surgery. And the mother said, won't Comfrey do it, Herbs? I said, use the surgeons. They're very skilled. Surgery has come a long way. What was interesting is this young boy refused antibiotics. 11 doctors, nurses, specialists talked to him. He said, no, I do not want antibiotics. I've never had it in my life and I don't want to start. They rang me up. They said, Barbara. I said, well, the human body can cope with 2 courses in a lifetime, and some surgeons will not operate unless you do. I said, I'll leave it up to you. So the mother and the father talked to the son. The son said, no, I do not want antibiotics. So the surgeon eventually came in and said, all right, I'll operate without the drugs. So they put him under general anaesthetic. And you know what they do then? Scrub it! And aren't you glad you're under anaesthetic? They clean it out. Because they know that's the first thing, yeah? Clean it out. Because this was an old house. That's why the doctor said, no, we're going to do antibiotics. Why were they doing antibiotics? Just in case. They scrubbed it out, did a beautiful job, stitching it all together, and then bound it up. And what they do now is they bind it up and they leave it for sometimes 2 or 3 days. Because they have found that changing the dressing every day can sometimes disrupt the healing process. So after 3 days, Joel went down to Sydney again to have the dressings changed. And there were a lot of nurses and a lot of doctors watching. No sign of infection at all. They were very surprised. You see, so often it's given just in case. Just in case. So what would have happened if Joel's arm had shown signs of infection? Well, you know what you do? You just do hot and colds. Maybe put some potato on to draw it out. The body can heal itself. It's an amazing organism. And that's why when I had to give a lecture to other mothers, a lot of homeschool where I was giving this lecture many years ago now, my son Peter, because it was called the mother, the nurse, my son Peter had pulled the generator on and it had flipped him. He'd flipped over and scraped his shin on a star post. And it looked really nasty. And it was 3 days before I was to give the meeting. I said, great, Pete. Look, Pete, do you mind if we don't wash it and we just let it go really horrible so that we can show the mothers in the meeting? Now, you know boys love scars. They love their words. Yeah, Mum. Yeah, right, Mum. Yeah. Anyway, the day of the meeting, it looked really bad. It had scabbed and there was a bubble of pus coming out the bottom. It was all swollen. He goes, look, Mum. I said, great piece, looking really good. 1 hour before the meeting, Pete's climbing a tree and he knocks it. And he knocked the scab off and blood and pus went everywhere. And he came running and said, sorry, Mum. I knocked the scab off. It looked really bad. I said, great, Pete. It's looking really good. I wanted to show these mothers that even that, what do? We just cleaned it up, put a poultice on it. That's what you do. But you also make sure the child's drinking adequate water. You also make sure they're having nourishing food. Fruits, veggies, nuts, grains, legumes. Because the blood is carrying the nutrients there. Is it that simple? It is that simple. So when I get a cold, even when I came back from Bali, I didn't even take olive leaf extract. No. And of course olive leaf extract, garlic, they can be like antibiotics. Because there's no need. Because the body can heal itself. Didn't I take high dose vitamin C? No, I actually like doing it without all of that. Because I know the body can do it. You can do all that. It'll help a bit. But it's the body that heals. Before we close, are there any questions? Yes?
Yes, I've got two questions. Number one, what's the best way to rebuild the immune system when you've taken many courses of antibiotics?
What is the best way to build your immune system if you've taken many antibiotics? Do you know it takes a while to recover, especially if you had quite a few. And the best way to do it is exercise, is your water treatments, is healing the gut. So that's your probiotic, your slippery elms, your aloe veras that coat, soothe and line the gut. And I would be very, very cautious to make sure you have the best quality food, organic food. Your organic food, see, one organic tomato has 9 times the iron of a conventionally grown tomato. In fact, I love the way it is so simple. Do you know, I learnt most of what I know in a rainforest. In a rainforest with not much money, learning what herbs grew where. It's so simple. And I believe God meant it to be very, very simple. And remember, it won't be quick. Little by little. I said to one lady, 40 years you've been doing this. I've got some good news. It won't take 40 years to heal. Got that? But it may take a couple. You had another question?
I think you've just answered it, but I was just going to say, what's the best probiotic to give?
What's the best probiotic? You know, many foods will give probiotic, like your sauerkraut, excellent probiotic. Your yogurt, you can get very good coconut yogurts now. You can get soy yogurt, you just have to make sure it's not got full of sugar in it. Miso, sourdough breads, so they are all naturally cultured foods. But if someone has had antibiotics, and if someone needs to build that gut flora quickly, you can take a probiotic supplement. And that's like a powder that you take 3/4 of an hour before your breakfast. Any more questions? Yes?
When you're drinking water through the night,
Yeah.
every time you wake up, isn't your stomach always working and you want it to rest?
No, your stomach's not digesting water. So the only time your stomach works is if it's food. See, in the morning when you wake up, your bottom valve, your pyloric sphincter, is open, so the water goes straight through. Yeah?
If you drink coconut oil, what effects does it have on the intestinal linings?
If you take the coconut oil is broken down in the mouth. Underneath your tongue there are sublingual glands, and lingual lipase starts the breakdown of the coconut, and then your coconut is absorbed through and into your blood, taken to your liver and burnt as fuel. That's what coconut does. Yes? If you have the foods, because of the state that they're in, because they are with vitamins and minerals and a whole range of nutrients, then it's basically a different process to if you take the pure powder. Yes?
When you get a bladder infection, it comes very soon.
Bladder infection. Remember the hot and colds we did on the finger? You can do hot and colds on the hips. You need tubs. Sitting in hot water, sitting in cold, sitting in hot, sitting in cold. That gives a mighty, mighty effect to the bladder. Cranberry Cranberry is very good. You can take very high dose of cranberry. Most people don't take enough. And golden seal. Golden seal is a herb that has a nickname. It's called King of Tonics to all mucous membranes. And it also is anti-staphylococcic, anti-streptococcic, antimicrobial, antifungal, anti-mold, antibiotic. There's your golden seal. It's very expensive, but you don't need very much. And also copious amounts of water. Copious amounts of water helps to flush out a UTI. Yes?
Just a question my wife had. She just wanted to know, is there any portions of fruit that you would recommend?
Any
portions of fruit?
fruit? Do you know, the amount of fruit people eat depends on so many things. If a person has a yeast presence in their body, they should go really low on the fruit. If someone's conquering cancer, very, very low on the fruit. If someone's a diabetic, they need to go very low on the fruit. So it depends on many things. And if someone's trying to lose weight, they need to go low on the fruit, because fruit is high in fibre, high in sugars, low in minerals, whereas vegetable is high in fibre, high in minerals, low in sugars. So your vegetables are more your healing group. Do you have a few questions there? No questions there.
I just hope.
Okay, yeah.
Iron builds up in the blood.
Iron build up in the blood, hemochromatosis, yeah? Too much iron in the blood is usually a mineral imbalance in the body. So I've seen two people totally heal from hematomacrosis, and these two people had totally different things. One lady had a mineral imbalance, so she started to eat organic fruits and vegetables and take some mineral supplements, and that healed it. And the other lady had a digestion problem. So she started to take some bitter herbs to boost digestion, boost her hydrochloric acid, and she healed from a hematomacrosis. She was also not chewing her food properly. She would have one or two chews and swallow it, and that makes it very difficult. So you're also investigating as to why these things are so. Yes?
Ongoing zinc. Do I need to eat all foods with zinc in it?
Food that has zinc in it is pumpkin seeds and sesame seeds. Tahini is great. And also, zinc is bound up in foods. Sourdough bread, that releases the zinc too. Last question, yeah? Okay, one of the main causes of eczema is an intolerance to wheat and dairy. And I would say without exception, I've seen eczema heal when wheat and dairy is stopped. Now, once you stop the wheat, it can take 2 months for the effect of it to get out of your body. My son-in-law stopped wheat and dairy, and his eczema got really under control. And then he had exposure to mold, which really zoomed it up. So he went one stop further, which totally eliminated his eczema, and he went grain-free. So he had no grain at all. So he ate very little fruit. He ate a lot of vegetables, a lot of legumes, and he totally conquered his eczema, a problem that he'd had for 30 years. Now, once he conquered his eczema, he started to eat a bit of grain. So can you see that until you conquer it, you've got to go really strict. Once you've conquered it, you can start to eat some of those food. So, you know, when a person's not well or they have a problem, they can go very severe, conquer it, and then they'll have it a little bit. So my daughter, her 3 little children have eczema because they got it from their dad. And she put them on grain-free, totally conquered it. Now today, we're 4 years later, those children have grain. And they have spelt sourdough sandwiches for lunch, and they've got it under control. But if they have spelt toast for breakfast, lunch and tea, the eczema arises again. So what my daughter's done is she's worked out how to balance that. Now if they go away and have some food that's not good and the eczema comes back, she puts them on grain-free for about a month, gets it back under control. So can you see there are things that you can do to conquer a certain condition? But with a lot of people, just stopping the wheat is enough. But I thank you for your attention tonight. Tomorrow, I'm going to be talking about the gastrointestinal tract, starting at the mouth, going down to the other end at 10 o'clock. And at 11 o'clock, I'm going to be showing you how you can rewire your brain right up until the day you die. And in the afternoon at 2 o'clock, I'm going to be talking about child nutrition. And everyone here who's been a child needs to hear that. Everyone knows children, but also it can explain sometimes why people are having problems today. So I look forward to seeing you tomorrow night.
Thank you.